I can just have them with the clerk. Yes. I think so. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Are we ready to bring in the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Can't see. Thank
Would counsel stipulate, please?
Yes, Judge.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
We continue with the state's case.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning. The state recalls Kristen Maydell.
And you are still under oath, Ms. Maydell. You may be seated.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Excuse me.
Sure, it's Kristen, Kristen, Maydell, Madel.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
Ms. Maydell, just before we get started, I'm going to hand you some exhibits which have been pre-marked for identification purposes. Specifically, I'm going to be handing you State's Exhibits 19 through 26, as well as 29 for identification. And I'm also going to be handing you States 112 for identification and 117 through 121 for identification purposes.
Billion times more likely to occur if it originated from the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush and one unknown individual than if it originated from two unknown individuals. Fotis Doulos and Michelle Troconis are eliminated as contributors to 41-2S1.
And then with respect to supplemental report number 9, the results were inconclusive as to the Doulos children. Is that correct?
That is correct. And Lauren Almeida and Paul Volgimini are also eliminated as contributors.
And just sticking with this particular submission, 41-3. And specifically the swabbing 41-3S2. And this was identified as a swabbing of the knot interior. What were the results? And this is found in 2, 9, and 18.
The results are consistent with the DNA profile from item 41-3S2 being a mixture of two contributors. Assuming two contributors, the DNA profile from 41-3S2 is at least 100 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush and one unknown individual than if it originated from two unknown individuals. The results do not support the hypothesis that Fotis Doulos is a contributor to this profile. Assuming two contributors, Fotis Doulos is eliminated as a contributor to item 41.3S2. The same conclusion from Michelle Troconis. The results do not support the hypothesis that she's a contributor. Assuming two contributors, Michelle Troconis is eliminated as a contributor to 41.3S2.
And with respect to the children, were the results that it was inconclusive as to whether or not they could be contributors to the profile?
That is correct.
And Pavel Gumieni and Lauren Almeida were eliminated.
Yes, the results did not support the hypothesis that they were contributors. They were also eliminated.
And just to refresh the jury's recollection, when you're saying that a result is inconclusive, what exactly does that mean?
That means that when we perform our likelihood ratio statistic, the number generated is above our elimination threshold, but below our threshold to say that it's a positive association. So we say no comparison, no conclusion can be made for that comparison.
I'm going to direct your attention now to 41.3-31S1 or 31S1, identified as a reddish-brown stain on the panty liner found within that particular submission. Did you get any results?
No DNA profile was generated from that sample.
And how about 41.3-1S2, which was a swabbing of the absorbent side of that particular panty liner?
The results are consistent with the DNA profile from item 41-3-1S2, originated from a single individual. Due to the limited data detected from 41-3-1S2, the comparison to the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush is inconclusive. Due to the limited data detected from that same item, the comparison to Fotis Doulos is inconclusive. Michelle Troconis is eliminated as the source of the DNA profile from 41-3-1S2.
And is it also fair to say in DNA supplemental report number 9, you concluded that Lauren Almeida, Pavel Gumieni, Petros Doulos, and Noel Doulos were eliminated as well?
Correct. And due to the limited data detected, the comparison to Constantine, Christiane, and Theodore are also inconclusive.
I want to just read a stipulation, paragraph 13 of State's Exhibit 103. State Police Exhibit 154, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Michael Butin on May 31st, 2019, and identified as one FedEx envelope, color white, containing 2 altered Connecticut license plates, seized from the scene storm drain at 1344 Albany Avenue, Hartford, Connecticut. It was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 96. So I'm opening up State Trial Exhibit 109, the folder, State Police Exhibit 154, lab submission 96. And I'm just going to display this. Lab 96, 1S1. These were photographs that it came to your attention that these particular license plates and the FedEx envelope that contained them were in a sewer drain. Is that correct?
Yes, that was in the description, yes.
So I want to just direct your attention to DNA report number 6, supplemental report number 6. Were you able to generate a profile on either of these license plates or the FedEx envelope?
Can you repeat the numbers, please?
It's DNA supplemental report number 6.
Sorry, no, the item numbers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
96-1, 96-2, and 96-3.
No DNA profile was obtained from any of those swabbings.
Okay, so the license plates that were found in the sewer drain did not have any, you were not able to get a profile?
We did not detect any DNA, no.
Could you just indicate to the jury how those items being in a sewer drain could have potentially influenced any DNA evidence that might have been contained on them?
Well, DNA, a sewer probably has water in it, I would believe, so water being exposed to the evidence that was sitting in the sewer drain would possibly wash it away. Also, depending how long it was in the sewer drain makes a big impact on getting rid of DNA also.
I'm going to read a stipulation now. Paragraph 2, State Police Exhibit 502A, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as one clear plastic bag with blood-like substance contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission number 50. And staying within State Trial Exhibit 109, I'm opening up the folder entitled State Police Exhibit 502A, Lab Submission 50. And I'm displaying Lab 50 with paper added.
Troconis' DNA in 2023, correct?
That is correct because I had 2 less sites for the comparison.
Right, it went down to 250,000 to 1 is a likelihood, correct?
That was a likelihood ratio, yes.
Assuming 4 contributors and 3 unknowns, right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to pull up a page from the deconvolution report. And before I do that, the deconvolution report also estimates the percentages of the 4 contributors to a mixture, correct?
Yes.
So I'm going to put up, I think it's marked as deconvolution. All right, could you zoom in on the bottom part, please? Well, let's start at the top here. This is from your 2019 STR mix report, correct?
Yes.
And this is their logo showing an untangling of a bunch of string up in the corner, correct?
Sure, yes.
All right. And again, so that the jury will understand what we're looking at here, this shows that this was, the file was 88-3S7, correct?
Yes.
That's the same number throughout. If anything that you testified about regarding this sample, it'll show 88-3S7, correct?
Correct.
And then and below that, it talks about the known contributor, and it's got the number 45-2G1. And for the juror's edification, you've already explained this, 45 is the sample that was assigned to the known profile of Michelle Troconis, right?
I believe 45 was Fotis Doulos. 47 was Troconis? Let me just make sure. Yes, 45 is Fotis Doulos and 47 is Michelle Troconis.
All right. So this report you ran against Fotis Doulos as a known contributor, correct?
Yes.
And if you go down to the bottom, all right, so when you ran this amount, it showed that 50% of the sample, right, according to Star Mix, was Fotis Doulos, correct?
Well, yes, it approximates how much each contributor is contributing to that profile before you make a comparison. It deconvolutes the whole profile and gives you the weights for those 4 people that I told it was. And then when you do the comparison with the known, it then tries to see by its already deconvoluted parts if the known matches to any of what the best explanations
Okay.
are.
Well, what I want you to do is when you look at the proportions of 1, 2, 3, and 4, when you ran it against unknowns, correct?
Well, you only run it against the one known at a time.
Okay, well, that's what I was trying to get at. And in this particular case, the third, shall we say, the third highest contribution, or the third lowest, if you will, was 5%, correct?
The third contributor is contributing 5%, approximately 5% of the DNA profile, correct?
5% of 100%, correct?
Correct.
And then the fourth person was 3%, right?
Approximately, yes.
Okay, so if we would go to the LR 47 report. Right. So this is a report that was written, well, that was part of a deconvolution report and likelihood ratio from August of 2019, correct?
Correct.
And this is a report you ran using star mix, correct? STR mix.
Correct.
And in this particular sample, you used 47 as the known contributor, correct?
Correct.
And again, you only run one at a time, as you said, correct?
Correct.
So if you would just go down to the lower part of this, okay? And so in this, it shows the location within the 4 profiles, separate DNA profiles, for the known sample of Michelle Troconis, correct?
Yes, it fits her to contributor number 3.
Right. And in that case, that would be a 5% of the total. Is that right?
Approximately, yes.
And then you reran this, as I think you indicated, in 2023. So if you would pull up 147, 2023, please. Okay, so up at the top, you ran this again in November of 2023, right?
Correct, after I redid the known with Global Filer.
Right. So let me also just indicate, you were given a newer, a more recent DNA sample of my client, correct?
Correct.
Now, her DNA didn't change in the 4 years since it was originally provided, did it?
No, of course not.
Okay. So when you go down to the bottom, it still came out third, correct, in 2023, correct?
Correct, yes.
And as I understand this, the first time you ran it using the Fusion 6C, it was in 2019. It was, the results were cannot be eliminated, correct? That's what you called it, right?
Yes, because that was the terminology we were using at the time.
And then now you use the terminology consistent with source, correct?
Consistent with the contributor for a mixture.
All right. But in any event, it was still only a partial DNA that you were comparing my client's known DNA against, correct? A partial profile, right?
Correct. Her full profile wasn't detected in this 4-person mixture.
Right. So if we do this, the math, if you started with 420 picograms, right? If you'd go back to the deconvolution report, second one, and then zoom in at the percentages here, right there. All right. So if we assume there was a total of 420 picograms, right? That means 50% of the sample belonged, in this case, to Mr. Doulos, correct?
Approximately, yes.
And when you swiped, excuse me, you didn't actually do the swiping for the sample in this case, correct?
You mean the swabbing of the bag?
The swabbing,
I did not know.
right? Someone else ran it somewhere along the exterior edge of that bag, correct?
From the description, it was the opening of the bag, yes.
Okay. And if I look at them, I'm not going to do the 42% is the next one, but if we go down to 5%, So 10% of 420 picograms would be 42 picograms, correct?
Correct.
And 5% of 420 picograms would be 21 picograms, correct?
Correct.
The last time we were here, I believe you estimated that approximately one human skin cell has a little more than 6 picograms, correct?
Correct. I agree with that.
So maybe 6.5, does that sound about right?
Yeah, somewhere around 6.
So if I'm to do the math correctly, there were 3 human skin cells that may have contributed to this front that could not be eliminated from Ms. Troconis's profile, correct?
Approximately, that's, yes, a fair statement.
3 skin cells, right?
Approximately.
Right. So that would be
Yes,
21 trillionths of a gram of DNA, right?
Well, Judge, I'm just going to object at this point. I don't think it's relevant because there's no indication that this DNA actually came from skin cells. So to make the leap that this is actually skin cell DNA, I think is a bridge too far at this point.
Well, the court heard the testimony of the witness that 6.5, 21 divided by 6.5 is approximately 3. So there's redirect examination for clarification, but the objection is overruled.
That's correct, right?
Well, yes, I could say that approximately 3 skin cells would make 21 picograms in this sample. But again, it is true that I can't say that the DNA on this bag came from skin cells. It could have been another form of DNA.
Right, but all cells that you use are basically, and human cells are the same size, correct?
Correct.
So it doesn't even matter if she sneezed, it's still only 3 cells, right?
Approximately, yes.
But when this was tested, it came to you as touch DNA, didn't it?
That's how the forensic biology described it in their paperwork.
And you
I don't have that in front of me.
Right, but if that's how they describe it, you don't change it when you get it, right? Unless you test for some kind of different substance, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I just tested.
Well, Attorney Schoenhorn, it's about 2 minutes before 1.
Yep.
Since an exhibit may be displayed, perhaps we should do that after the luncheon recess.
That'll be fine, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, we stand in our luncheon recess. We resume at 2 o'clock. Please do not discuss the case.
Yes, it's a sponge. It was removed from a sponge.
12, right, I think, is your report.
For 88-1, 1S2?
881-1S2-01.
Yes.
Yeah, it came from a green and yellow sponge,
Yes.
correct? And that was the one found inside one of the black garbage bags, correct?
Yes, I believe 88 was a black garbage bag.
Yeah. And it was found, I don't know if your notes indicate this, but there's been testimony, it's found by the latent print examiner, the fingerprint individual who testified inside one of those bags.
I'm not aware of the latent print finding.
Okay. But in any event, you did the hair analysis using the mitochondrial DNA to make a determination, correct?
Yes, I did mitochondrial DNA testing and developed a sequence, yes.
You don't know how that hair got on that scrub green and yellow sponge, do you?
I do not, no.
But you indicated that Pavel Gumieni could not be excluded from being the source of that DNA, correct?
Or anybody in his maternal line, yes.
Which means, when you say it could have been his mother,
Yep, mother, siblings,
siblings.
children. Not
Well,
his children, sorry. Not
was
his
gonna say-
children. Nope, his mother or his siblings, yes.
Right, couldn't be his child because
No,
it's
he's
coming
mi-
from his side of the family. It
Yes.
would only be from the mother's side of the family, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And you indicated, as I understand it, that the full mitochondrial profile, DNA profile for Pavel Gumieni was the same as that of the hair that was on that yellow and green sponge, right?
Correct, yes.
I want to ask you just a couple of questions about the blouse and the other item, the bra that was examined, the DNA that you extracted from that particular item, or those two items. You indicated, did you not, that there was a mixture of two contributors, correct?
On which item are you referring to?
The blouse, striped blouse.
411S1?
Yeah.
Yes, 2 contributors.
One of them you identified as being consistent with actually full included, the source being the person we know to be Jennifer Doulos, correct?
Yes, the toothbrush cannot be eliminated.
Cannot be eliminated as the source.
But yes, but with 100 billion times more likely as the statistic.
And the same thing with the other item of clothing, the brassiere.
What number item is that?
So right around that same number, I don't know, 40.
41 2S1?
Yes.
That was a portion of British brown stain from the bra, and that was a mixture of 2 contributors.
Also 2 contributors.
Yes,
And one of them being the person whose profile was obtained from the toothbrush, correct?
correct,
And that would
yes.
be Jennifer Doulos as we know it.
Yes,
You know the name, right?
yes.
Did you test to determine who the second contributor was on these items?
I believe everybody that was compared was eliminated, but I have
Was
to,
excluded, eliminated as being the source, right?
as being a contributor.
Did you ever determine who that second contributor to those items was?
Not from any more, no more knowns were submitted, no.
Did you ever, were you ever asked to compare it to an individual by the name of Kent Mawini?
No, I did not have his known submitted to the lab.
All right. I just have a moment. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Redirect, please.
Ms. Nadell, you were asked questions on cross-examination about 883S7. Do you recall those questions?
Yes,
So just to recap, there were 2 different statistics or analysis that you did with respect to the defendant's known DNAs, one under the previous DNA kit and one under the more recent DNA kit. Is that correct?
yes, there was 2 different reports with 2 different comparisons, yes.
And both statistics are valid, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So it is 780,000 times more likely that the defendant was a contributor on the bag that had Jennifer Dulos's DNA and duct tape. Is that correct?
Objection. First of all, this is leading. Second of all, it's misstatement of what her findings are regarding likelihood
The
ratio.
court understands the findings to be in this form. Assuming a certain number of contributors, it is then X times more likely to have originated from a certain source of the profile generated from a certain swab and one unknown individual than from two unknown individuals. That's the form of the testimony. And the court is going to sustain the objection because the form, as explained by Ms. Maydell, was not quoted or followed.
Yes, Judge, I'll rephrase. With respect to 88-3S7, it was your conclusion that that profile was consistent with 4 contributors, correct?
Yes,
And it is 780,000 times more likely that the defendant was a contributor to that particular profile with 3 unknown individuals as opposed to 4 unknown individuals. Is that correct?
that is correct, yes.
And that bag had Jennifer Dulos's DNA and duct tape on the inside. Isn't that correct?
I would have to go back to see that duct tape was collected from that parent item.
I would direct you to 88-3S4. Exposed sticky sides of duct tape.
Yes, so that would have been inside parent item 88.
And Jennifer Dulos was also assuming 2 contributors, 100 billion times more likely to be a contributor to that exposed sticky side of duct tape, correct?
Your Honor, this is absolute leading. The witness already testified. We don't need Mr. McGinnis to repeating the answers. He can ask regular questions.
Well, the cross-examination covered these essentially likelihood ratio. So the objection is overruled.
Ms. Maydell, do you remember the question?
88-3S4, you wanted to know that the toothbrush was 100 billion times more likely?
Yeah, and actually I'll use Mr. Schoenhorn's phrase. The toothbrush is really the person we know to be Jennifer Dulos.
Correct, yes, that's what we're using for.
Okay. And what were the results with respect to 88-3S4, those exposed sticky sides of duct tape?
Yeah, that was 2 contributors and 100 billion times more likely that originated from the toothbrush for Jennifer Dulos and 1 unknown individual than 2 unknown individuals.
Incidentally, you were asked on cross-examination by Attorney Schoenhorn about the amount of DNA that was found on 88-3S7. In your experience doing this for, I think, over 20 years now, if I'm not mistaken, is it uncommon to have such small amounts of DNA?
No, we can develop DNA profiles or partial DNA profiles from very little amount of DNA with our new sensitive kits. So no, having 20, 30 picograms, we can develop some DNA profiles, yes.
And just for the jury's benefit, simply because a particular profile has a small amount of DNA, does that mean that the person who is likely to be a contributor to that profile didn't actually touch it?
Yeah, I can't tell how the DNA got there. All I can do is process the sample, develop the DNA profile, and then make comparisons to the known to see if the types are present in that evidentiary profile. I can never say how that DNA or when that DNA got on that item.
You were asked about 88-1 1S2, 88-1-1S2.
The
which
hair.
was a hair found on a sponge. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And you were asked on cross-examination about whether or not Pavel Gumieni could be eliminated as the source of that particular hair. Do you recall those questions?
My conclusion is that he cannot be excluded as being the source or someone in his paternal line.
I want you to assume that someone had cleaned Mr. Gumieni's vehicle with that sponge. Is it possible that a hair from Mr. Gumieni, being that it's his vehicle, could have ended up on that sponge?
Objection, again, it's the same objection Mr. McGinnis made. There is no evidence that anyone cleaned his truck with that sponge. So there is not a basis for making that assumption or hypothetical or
Well,
foundation.
Of course, the court has to determine which facts bear a true and fair relationship to each other. And then it has to determine whether the additional facts are appropriate for the hypothetical. So at this point, based on that question, even though there is no evidence that that sponge was used to clean the door panel or any other area of the Tacoma, the hypothetical is fair, overruled.
Yes, it's known that you shed hairs constantly. So if you are driving around your car, it's likely that you're going to shed some hairs into your own car. And then if you are wiping something down, you pick that up onto that sponge or a towel or whatever you're wiping it with.
And I just had a chance to review the results briefly, and so this isn't an entirely fair question, but with the exception of that hair, which we just talked about, isn't it true that Mr. Gumieni was eliminated from every single profile from items recovered in Hartford?
Again, I'm going to object to the leading nature of the question, and I thought there were some inconclusive, so it's an improper
No,
question.
the court is not certain that this witness knows what items were recovered from Hartford, because this witness only knows what is in essentially the transmittals from biology. So the court will sustain the objection but allow you to rephrase the question.
Earlier, I was reading a stipulation out loud with respect to where certain items were seized. You'll recall that.
Yes.
And there were certain items that were read out loud from the stipulation that were recovered in Hartford. And my question is with respect to those items, and I guess I can 50, 51, 54, 61, 62, 52, 53, 55, 88, 40, 41, 96, although no profiles were developed on 96. But for the items that you were able to develop profiles on, isn't it true that Mr. Gumieni was eliminated from every single profile?
There's eliminations or inconclusive, but no positive associations.
And you were asked about item 86S1 by Attorney Schoenhorn. That was the swabbing of the cutting taken from the Tacoma. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
And you were asked on cross-examination whether or not any confirmatory blood testing had been done on that particular swabbing. I believe you indicated no, correct?
Correct.
Could you just indicate to the jury why no confirmatory testing was done in that particular case?
Well, I wasn't the one to examine the evidence, but for protocol purposes, since it came in labeled KM positive, we wouldn't repeat that screening test. And if the sample appeared to be limited, you wouldn't want to consume any of that sample and have a chance of taking away some of the DNA that we maybe developed from that profile by using it to just confirm that it's human blood.
And I think, as Attorney Schoenhorn pointed out on cross-examination, some of these DNA samples can actually be incredibly small. Is that correct?
Yes, incredibly small.
And so each time you do a test on it, it actually destroys some of that potential profile, correct?
Or remove some of that sample that you would have for DNA if you use it for a different test, yes.
If I could just have a moment, Judge.
Yes.